Hello everyone and welcome to the public library. This place looks awesome, if a little bit different than the libraries I'm used to visiting. A lot of the library seems to be dedicated to fancy architecture and beautiful scenery, including some small gardens. Most of the libraries I've been to, even the big ones, usually are focused on sticking as many books in them as possible. Seems like holding books for this library was a second priority to looking pretty. Like, looking pretty was the main idea they had. Like, even the huge two-story library in the nearest city, they're like, alright, how many books can we physically cram in here? Like, how many can we get in here legally? The legal limit of books in this place. I rather like the layout of this level. There's this traditional arena in the center where we're fighting right now, and you can do pretty much the whole level in this arena in the center if you want, but you might die kind of fast that way. So, you know, running into the arena is fine if you want all the enemies to swarm you and want to take them out quick, but running into the side rooms, very good idea if you want to escape. There's also an upper floor that hardly any of the enemies will ever use, but I also hardly ever use it because it's kind of out of the way to get up there. There's really not a lot of books in here, considering it's a library. Like, the amount of books is staggeringly minimal. Maybe they're all historically relevant books or something. This place looks pretty fancy and high class. Even the lamps look fancy and high class, so, you know. Even the windows look fancy and high class, so maybe all the books are the same way. That would explain why I don't see a comic book section or a video game or DVD section. You know, libraries have video games in them now. Because that's kind of cool. It's been a while since I've been to a library with video games in it, but I'm pretty sure the library I last visited would still have video games. Like, I don't think they'd spontaneously stop accepting video game donations. And I'd really like, I mean, I know it's not realistic for the kind of library they were trying to make, but I'd really think it was cool if a library in a video game, not this one, because again, that's not the kind of library they were trying to make in this game, but a library in some video game had video games or DVDs or CDs in it somewhere. I don't know if the idea that people have of libraries is just outdated, but it's a lot more than a place with books. And even when it is just a place with books, as was already brought up, there are usually a lot more books than this. So it's pretty sparse library. Like, if I can't walk into a library and rent Turbo Stunt Squad on the Wii U, or rent Care Bears, what was it? Not Care Bears, Gummy Bears Magical Medallion on the Wii, then really, what can you even call it a library at that point? Okay, back to the game. This is the level that made me fall in love with the shotgun. Even though each gun in the game has its uses, it's really impractical to use all of them unless you plan to upgrade every single gun, which would, like, make your playtime way longer than you would probably want. You gotta spend a good 7 or so hours to get the ending and fight the final boss in the game as is. If you want to purchase and upgrade every single gun to its maximum, then wow, that's gonna take a lot out of you. You could play a JRPG in that time. Again, it wasn't meant to be multiplayer focused, and people do play multiplayer games for thousands of hours. But I don't, oh man, I died. But I don't think this is one that people would play for thousands of hours, personally. So, when I first started up the game and was going through all the levels, the idea was to find a gun to stick by me, and that gun wound up being the pump-action shotgun. Ironically, again, the gun that I can't say every reviewer, was only two. The gun that those two reviewers I mentioned complained about. And that's because I have a preferred method of combat in third-person shooters. I prefer close to mid-range combat, and it just turns out that this game is mostly close to mid-range combat. And the pump-action shotgun is the best gun for close to mid-range combat. Now, I needed a second weapon for long-range combat after I figured out my primary gun. And the first choice was the revolver. But as soon as I figured out how fun it was to aim the grenade launcher, that immediately became my new long-range weapon of choice. Because aiming the grenade launcher is just way too fun. We're getting a little off track, but what I was trying to say is this is the level that made me decide to use the shotgun as my primary weapon. because I started noticing the pattern of most of the battles being close range to mid-range combat, which is what the shotgun was perfect for. The shotgun in this game, not entirely useless at mid to long range, which is contrary to what most people think of when they think video game shotguns. As for the grenade launcher, I'm not quite sure when exactly I decided that it was the best thing, but it just sort of adds like a physics puzzle element to the game that I really enjoy. Like, all of a sudden it's not just a third-person shooter, it's also a physics puzzler. Very basic physics puzzler, but still. You know, I'm very simple. What do you need for a good physics puzzle? You need a physics object and you need a slant, like stairs. What did the game give me? Gave me both of those things, so I'm happy. I don't think this level is personally outstanding. I do like that there's a traditional arena in the level, in the big one in the center, the garden, with all these little offshoots. I don't think the upstairs is particularly interesting or valuable from a game design standpoint, because the enemies rarely spend their time up there, so you don't want to spend your time up there either, and they're not exactly a great place to snipe from. But mostly I like this level because it's where I learned to love the shotgun. It's a very sentimental level for me. Normally it may not be all that sentimental, but I had to replay these stages a lot, alright? You know, I hate putting numbers on games as a method of rating them, and I hate the idea that we put those numbers in aggregate because someone else's 5 is not your 5 and vice versa. The numbers have feelings attached to them, and the feelings are not universal. So the idea of comparing scores for video games is just stupid. But if you have to put a number on a video game, can we, like, lower the average game score from 7 to 5, like it should be? Like, a 5 out of 10 should not mean awful. It should mean average, okay, inoffensive, worth it if you're a fan of whatever the genre is. But for some reason, 7 is considered minimally acceptable. Like, that's the minimally acceptable score. And when other people try to break out of that and rate games like, you know, a sensible person might, and use scores below 7 to mean things other than bad, they don't work. It doesn't work because other people just ignore it. Like, I'm saying if I was a professional reviewer, this game probably a 5 or 6. And most people would think if I rated this game a 5 or 6 as a professional reviewer, that would mean I think it's awful. But I don't. I obviously like the game, and trying to be more objective about it, I think it's a pretty alright, decent third-person shooter, an arena shooter that's worth your time if you're a fan of third-person arena shooters. Good way to spend a few afternoons. But if I want to convey my point, if I want people to feel what I'm actually saying, then I would have to rate it a 7. And that just blows. I think letter grades are much better. I think EGM upgraded to letter grades, and that was a brilliant decision. Letter grades are much more sympathetic than number grades. Like, I've gotten a lot of C's in my life. I've gotten a lot of D's in my life. And there are a lot of reasons for someone to get a C or a D. And maybe you want to, you know, that person may still be worth talking to about academic subjects. They may just have goofed up somewhere. Or maybe they aren't doing so hot in one specific area of that curriculum.
Excellent. Now either guard him while we arrest, or execute him with a bullet to the head.